Biden is the least bad option for them, and all they care about is winning and staying in power because it's really the machinery that governs, not Joe Biden, the individual. So they just need their team calling the shots, Team Democrat, right? So with that as the mentality, I think it's quite clear that Kamala Harris is not going to be stepping. Now, would Kamala Harris step in during Biden term 2? Yeah, I think that I actually can see very readily because, you know, first of all, his age. I mean, legitimately, Joe Biden is getting to an age now where it wouldn't be some scheme or plot. He may just be unable to do the job.
Buck, I don't know how much attention you've paid to this, but there's increasing nervousness surrounding how incompetent Kamala Harris is. The Washington Post had a massive feature piece in the last day or so, and it featured, as these pieces tend to do, a lot of anonymous sources, but these were not Republicans attacking Kamala Harris. This was Democrats effectively saying she's incompetent. There was a University of New Hampshire poll that came out recently, 2024 presidential poll. Mayor Pete, believe it or not, was polling better than Joe Biden, 23% Mayor Pete, 18% for Joe Biden. But Kamala Harris was at 2%. And, I mean, this is an indictment overall of her political skills. And I wanted to play this audio for you of Kamala Harris. It feels to me, Buck, like all of her speechwriters hate her because they put things into a teleprompter that not only are juvenile and sound a bit like a kindergarten teacher is talking to her classroom, but also just sound even worse the way that she delivers it. And so we've had so many of these awkward clips, but this just happened, I think, yesterday. Kamala Harris was talking about astronauts and going to space because these are the kind of things they have events for her to discuss. This is what it sounded like. Enjoy.
Which brings me to May 30th, 2020. Bob and Doug returned to the Kennedy Space Center. They suited up, they waved to their families, and they rode an elevator up nearly 20 stories. They strapped in to their seats and waited as the tanks beneath them filled with tens of thousands of gallons of fuel. And then they launched. Yeah, they did.
I mean, Buck, if this was your kindergarten teacher and she was like flipping through a storybook, you might be like, okay, I like her enthusiasm. I appreciate the way she's talking to the kids. This is the woman who's a heartbeat away from being the leader of the free world. It's terrifying.
And again, I think you just have to look at the Democrat Party realities as it stands internally for them. There is no way, if it's not Biden, it has to be Kamala. There's no way they allow for an open primary challenge and Kamala Harris gets pushed aside for Gavin Newsom. I'm sorry. For the optics on that, no way. And so this is why it all comes full circle to it's got to be Biden again. And look, they didn't find any classified. We just gave you that breaking news. I mean, it's not the most exciting breaking news in the world, but it is breaking in the last hour. They didn't find more classified, strewn about next to the Corvette or whatever else. But I do think that Kamala Harris has proven to be an even weaker and less likable politician in the role than the Democrats anticipated. And remember, Democrats didn't vote for her, right? So the expectations were pretty low, I think, for how she would do in office. But she has the lowest profile in terms of the vice president's job you have to go back many administrations.
Yeah, and it's not only the low profile, it's that even with the low profile, she manages to appear incompetent every time she speaks. And one of the stories that is prevalent about Kamala Harris is she basically just doesn't do her homework. She's not someone who is a grinder. She's not trying to master details. And I think that's because, let's be honest, she has used the fact that she is a minority and a woman to play this identity politics hand adroitly. The problem that she has, and I think it's really the essence of her. She is what is she, almost 60 now, right? Almost a 60-year-old woman. She has no children of her own. She's married to a Jewish lawyer from L.A. who was in a big high-end law firm. And she doesn't really connect with that many people out there. And I think you could use an interesting contrast with Trump, for instance, because, Buck, when we interviewed Trump at Bedminster, and I talked about this on air, but I do think it's really significant, and this was behind the scenes. While we were talking to him, Donald Trump Jr., really good guy, funny, active on social, came in with his family to say hi because they were having the Live Golf event during one of the commercial breaks, and Jr. had his kids, that is, Trump's grandchildren. And it was just so interesting to see Trump interacting as grandpa, right? One of his granddaughters was there, and he was talking about whether she wanted to go out and play golf with him. And in that moment, you strip away much of the larger character of Donald Trump, and he's just grandpa to that little girl, right? And so what I mean by that is a big part of Trump's appeal, I really think, Buck, was the fact that his kids, unlike Hunter Biden, they're all pretty good kids, right? Like,
yes.
All of his kids have done well for themselves in terms of growing into adulthood, having their own kids, having their own life, staying out of trouble.
They're all pretty exceptional. I mean,
Yes.
honestly, let's just look at this. I mean, even apart from their last name, they're successful adults with
Variety
skills
of
and
interests.
brands of their own.
And that's a credit to dad and mom and the culture that they helped to create in those kids. And what I mean by that is, if you think about Kamala Harris, for instance, running against Trump, I think Trump would utterly destroy her because she doesn't do her homework. She doesn't really, this idea of the American dream, I don't think she really fulfills it. Obama, I think a big part of Obama's appeal was he had young kids in the White House with him. I think if DeSantis were the nominee, I think having those young kids would matter in a big way. Kamala is just not talented and unlikable.
One of the unassailable, Obama presented a very solid family unit and family image, and it was very appealing.
And his daughters too seem to have done well, right? I mean, a credit to him. Like, they've graduated from schools.
It is what it is. We live in Realityville, and the Obama family unit was, all the four of them together was an asset to him politically, and a credit to him as a man. It's the narrative matters, as you know. I mean, the narrative around the individual is a big part of this, and the Kamala as president narrative, look, there are some aspects of it the Democrats will play up and they'll really like. But as it pertains to voters, right, the Democrat machine will say, oh, it's amazing, glass ceiling shattering and all this stuff, right? But getting the voters, we ran the experiment. You saw the voters the last time around. They were not, I'm talking Democrat primary voters, not enthusiastic about Kamala Harris.
Well, and I think a big part of that going back is people like to see themselves reflected in the candidate in some way. Dad or mom, however they fit in the family dynamic. This is honestly, though it drives you crazy, I think a big appeal of the royal family, because people project their own family dynamics onto the royal family, and they say, oh, this guy in our family is like Prince Harry. But if you look at Kamala Harris, she's Indian and black, and she's married to a white guy, and she has no children. Okay? How much of the black experience does Kamala Harris connect with if you are in Georgia or you're in South Carolina or you are growing up black in America today? You probably aren't, half Indian. Your parents probably, I think her parents were PhD students. You probably have kids yourself. You probably aren't married to a white lawyer in LA who's making $1 million a year. In other words, I think Kamala Harris rings very artificial to almost everyone across the political spectrum, black, white, Asian, Hispanic. That registers, and it's why I think to a big degree Democrats are so desperate to drag Joe Biden out again, because she's awful. She can't win, and they know it, and they're trying to forestall that inevitable loss.
Biden is the least bad option for them, and all they care about is winning and staying in power because it's really the machinery that governs, not Joe Biden, the individual. So they just need their team calling the shots, Team Democrat, right? So with that as the mentality, I think it's quite clear that Kamala Harris is not going to be stepping. Now, would Kamala Harris step in during Biden term 2? Yeah, I think that I actually can see very readily because, you know, first of all, his age. I mean, legitimately, Joe Biden is getting to an age now where it wouldn't be some scheme or plot. He may just be unable to do the job.
This is not hyperbole, Buck. I think he can barely run in 2024 purely from a health perspective. If you watch this guy, he is deteriorating rapidly in front of us. And 2 years when you're 80 is a lot different than 2 years when you're 50 or 60 or 70, right? I mean, that's a massive jump.